Doctor, welcome to committee. Thank you.
Okay, I'm very nervous because I've never done this before, and I am a doctor, but I am a PhD. I'm not a medical physician, so don't ask me any medical questions, please. I am the descendant of slaves and indigenous people. And because of that, I am here to urge our representatives to support HB 248 because I remember history and I do not want to repeat it. My paternal great-grandmother, Huida Williams, was born on a plantation in Bullock, Alabama, and she lived there until she was 6. Eventually, she and her family moved north and settled in Ohio. I knew her very well, and I used to visit her a few times a month. She died when I was 11 years old. My maternal grandfather, Joseph Tolliver, had to leave Birmingham, Alabama, with his brother William because they were so outspoken about discrimination and equality for blacks that they were repeatedly threatened with lynching. So Joe and Maddie, his wife, also moved to Ohio. Prior to leaving the Magic City, which is what my grandmother, Mama Maddie, used to call Birmingham, because she thought when she came north that there were all these cows and fields and stuff. She said they used to wear gloves to go to the grocery store, so she couldn't understand how the North was so much better than the South, okay? But prior to coming to Ohio, she was a Sunday school teacher at 16th Street Baptist Church. Had she and Joe not moved north, she would have been in the basement where those 4 young girls, Addie Mae Collins, who was 14, Cynthia Wellesley, who was 14, Carol Robertson, who was also 14, and Carol Denise McNair, who was 11, and they were all blown up. And I might not be here today. My parents, Nina and Kenneth, did what they could to stand for justice and equality during the Civil Rights Movement so that I, when I was born in 1968, was free and had the same privileges under the law as everyone else. But a vaccine mandate will change that. Any student of history clearly sees the distinct parallels between segregation due to race and segregation due to vaccine status. Inherent in this discriminatory practice is the understanding that what is happening in COVID, or whatever the next fear-driven narrative connected to illness is, will become the next battle for civil rights. Government-sanctioned discrimination based on skin color is no different than government-sanctioned discrimination based on vaccine status. The unvaccinated will become second-class citizens just like blacks once were. During the Civil Rights Movement, blacks fought against unjust laws. Today, citizens are fighting against the tyranny of government officials and the bullying from people in their daily lives who expect them to relinquish their God-given freedoms upheld in the Constitution to the state and to obey mandates, mere words of men, which are not laws. In slavery, blacks were masked for several reasons: to dehumanize, to shame, to silence, to isolate, to punish, to emphasize otherness, and to incite fear. Blacks also had to show their papers to prove that they had freedom of movement off and on the plantations owned by their masters. How are the COVID masks, social distancing, tracking and tracing, and vaccine passports of today any different than the tools used by the oppressors of yesteryear? They aren't. Fear and intimidation were used on blacks then, and it is being used in the exact same way on citizens now. Fear is psychological warfare. When the mind is controlled by fear, then one's body and movements can also be controlled. And let me add, what did Roosevelt say? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Lockdowns, masks, tracking and tracing, and vaccine mandates are abusive because they are systematically stripping away the freedoms of citizens to choose for themselves the best course of action for their health. The idea of mandatory vaccinations for people to keep their jobs smacks of the same abusive legislators that legislators have historically used against whatever people group they perceive to be inferior. Forced vaccinations, medical passports, tracking and tracing are all forms of medical apartheid. And I would encourage you to read Harriet Washington's book, which I have in the back, that's called Medical Apartheid. I have several physicians in my family. A couple of them have taken the vaccine and have had adverse reactions, tremors, and their parents, who are also physicians, have decided that they're not taking it for that reason. One of my cousins went into anaphylactic shock shortly after taking the vaccine. These processes are obviously discriminatory, And it's horrific to think that what people are enduring today is a repeat performance of the past. Will COVID or future illnesses and all that they entail spark a new movement for equal justice under the law? Currently, disparate treatment runs rife across this nation, spreading like wildfire, demanding in exchange for job security and participation in society the injection of medical treatments that are devoid of both FDA approval and legal recourse when damaging side effects occurs is draconian at best and criminal at worst. What happened to my body, my choice? Don't ask, don't tell. The basic right to privacy. Those who love freedom must act before it's too late. Please support HB 248.